Good morning. Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Lynchburg. Here we gather in a spirit of freedom and friendship. Whoever you are, whatever your beliefs, whatever your age, and whomever you love, you are welcome here. As we work together for justice, compassion, and peace, we also acknowledge with humility that our buildings sit on land originally part of the Monacan Nation. My name is Kim Sinna, and I have been a member of First Unitarian Church for 18 years. If you are with us for the first time, we are glad you chose to be here this morning to participate in the service for this church community that we love. We would be happy to tell you more about our community during virtual social time following the service. If you would like to receive our monthly newsletter and Friday email updates, please fill out the virtual visitor card found on our website, uulynchburg.org, under Sunday services held via Zoom. You may also wish to join our Facebook group. For those of you on Zoom, please note that the order of service is in the chat to the right of your screen. There are also little yellow cards on the seat backs that you can fill out to receive our newsletter and Friday email updates. Let's take a short minute to greet our neighbors in the sanctuary and on Zoom. I do have one announcement. Please join us for lunch if you so choose, at River Vermont Beer House after the service. They have indoor and outdoor seating and offer gluten-free and vegetarian options. Are there any other announcements? Okay, then. As we enter our time of worship, we light the flame of our chalice, sharing these words. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, O Spirit of life. Our opening words are from J.E. Abernathy Jr. Let us seek the quiet and the calm. Let us lay aside our loud calling. Let us lay aside our struggle. Speak softly. Let us listen to the melodies that recall other proportions. Our moments tarry not with us. Let us then seek the dimension that endures beyond all nowness and here-ness, beyond all requirement and all particularity. Let us speak softly that we may hear. Let us enter into the quiet. Now, if you'll join together, we'll sing hymn number 16, "'Tis a Gift to Be Simple."
'Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in a place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend, we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right. 'Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend, we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right.
The ministries of our church are supported by the love, talents, and efforts of our many volunteers and staff, as well as the monetary support of our members and friends. If you have found this church to be of value in your life, then I invite you to use the donate button found at the UU Lynchburg org at the bottom of the menu on the left for donations to First Unitarian. Just click the button and give generously through any credit card or directly from your bank. You can also send a check to First Unitarian Church, 818 Court Street, Lynchburg, Virginia, 24504. these monetary gifts, along with the gifts of your time, work, and creativity, which also sustain our church, as together we give generously to support our congregation, let us also commit ourselves to a unity of spirit to make manifest a more just, peaceful, and loving world. It is our tradition to honor the whole of our lives, and so you are invited. When I first learned about the chaos theory during the summer before my 8th grade year, I never expected it to have such a profound impact on my spirituality. Meteorologist Edward Lorenz first discovered the chaos theory when he realized that one small, infinitesimally small change can lead to a dramatically different result. And he proved it with math. In a complex system, one small change can lead to a result that hadn't ever been imagined. Meteorologists dubbed this as the butterfly effect, which hypothesizes that a butterfly flapping its wings in one part of the globe could cause a tornado in another. The weather system is too complex to fully ever be predicted. One small change, the butterfly flapping its wings, could lead to a dramatically different result in the end. The more complex the system, the more likely is a small change can have a drastic impact. Now, what system out there is more complex than life? If the chaos theory proves that in complex systems, small changes lead to dramatic results, then it follows that the chaos theory also proves that in life, a small change can also lead to a dramatic result. This is an incredibly empowering thought to me. Small changes in my personal life can lead to dramatic improvements years down the road. And the small changes I try to make through engaging in social justice work have the potential to change the entire world. So I've often felt overwhelmed about social justice. How can I change the entire world? It's too hard, too complicated to change the world. I'm just one person. How often have you felt something similar? We have to have faith to take these small actions. We have to have faith that in the end, our small actions matter, that our small actions will lead to the result we want. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. We can't predict what will happen when a small change has been entered into a complex system. The only thing we can predict is that we've changed the future in some way. Every single one of us can make a change today that will change the future in ways we can't possibly imagine today. What changes will you make? Our speaker this morning is Ann Gibbons, and I feel safe in saying that if we were to rank all the speakers who come here regularly, she's at the top of the list. And that's why we invite her back every year. She's one of my favorite speakers for many reasons, but she always has a very thought-provoking message for us, sometimes delivered humorously, which we appreciate. So I'll turn it over to Ann Gibbons.
Good morning. Thank you, Kim. Thank you. I think it's David that's working the magic. I don't know how in the world that all happens, that we can have music from different places and speakers from different places, and we can see folks that are joining us remotely. It all feels like magic to me. It is magic to me, and I'm deeply grateful for everybody who works so hard behind the scenes to pull this together. So for those of you who are here present, including some personal friends of mine, thank you for coming out. And for those who are joining virtually, some of whom I know and some of whom I don't know, I hope you have a lovely beverage. I hope you're in your most comfortable PJs and sweatpants right now. And I want to do a special shout out. I see in the corner, my friend Margie Scheel is in the middle of at the beginning of 100 days from a stem cell transplant for leukemia. And she's doing very well in Chicago. And so just special shout out to Margie, who apparently is joining us. When Gary Duvall invited me to join you for a summer Sunday service, I chose this date as it was close to my return from visiting Haiti, which is always my country of choice if given the opportunity to travel outside of the US. I've been to Haiti many times since my first visit in 1993. Almost always, I spend most of my limited time, usually only a week to 2 weeks, on a small island off the main island, which is called Lago Nav, and I spend most of my time there in a small community called Matanoa. One of the things that made this trip different was the advice I received to register with the US Embassy to alert them to my travel. In doing so, and upon completion of the questionnaire, an alert immediately popped up on my computer screen. Do not travel to Haiti. Due to kidnapping, crime, civil unrest, US citizens should carefully consider the risks of traveling to and remaining in Haiti. The advisory continued. Kidnapping cases often involve ransom negotiations. US citizens have been physically harmed during kidnappings. Violent crimes such as armed robbery and carjacking is common. Protests, demonstrations, tire burnings, and roadblocks are frequent, unpredictable, and can turn violent. Reading all this gave me cause to pause until I thought about what it might mean for someone from another country to visit these United States. So here is what I read from the government of Canada regarding travel advice to the US. Incidents of violent crime are mainly carried out by gangs or members of organized crime groups, but may also be perpetrated by lone individuals. The rate of firearm possession in the US is high. It's legal in many states for US citizens to openly carry firearms in public. Incidents of mass shootings occur, resulting most often in casualties. Demonstrations may occur. Even peaceful demonstrations can turn violent at any time. So, recognizing that travel and life in general carry inherent risks, no matter where you are, I did indeed travel back to Haiti, and I'm happy to be able to share with you some of my thoughts and reflections this morning. I am often struck by people's impressions of Haiti based on realities such as the travel advisory, but also on the level of poverty and instability that is often compared to the relative affluence and stability of the neighboring Dominican Republic, the neighboring country which shares the island of Hispaniola with Haiti. What's wrong with Haiti seems to be the pressing question. When I hear that query, I'm reminded of the lessons I learned about trauma-informed care in chaplaincy with students and in working with patients at the free clinic where I worked in Richmond before retiring. Often when we meet someone whose behavior and actions may be upsetting or troublesome or concerning, our gut instinct is to wonder, what's wrong with them? Being trauma informed moves us beyond our initial, often negative impressions or judgment to instead have a curiosity about what happened to them, what circumstances, situations, challenges, and obstacles created the conditions for the behavior or actions that we are witnessing. In the case of Haiti, known by so many as the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, what's wrong with them is definitely connected to what has happened to them. And probably the most thorough, well-researched, and helpful explanation of Haiti's history was published in the New York Times in May of this year. And if you haven't had a chance, you can see it online. It's entitled The Ransom. It was just a few months ago published. Without going into detail, all the details of some of the most helpful historical facts that we can keep in mind have to do with Haiti's relationship with France and what has come to be known as the double debt. France had colonized Haiti and brutally oppressed and tortured the Africans who had come over as part of the Atlantic slave trade. Out of the absolute misery of a people was born a revolution. The enslaved, led by Toussaint Louverture, eventually revolted and laid claim as the first successful slave revolution in the world in 1791, declaring their independence in 1804. But the celebration was short-lived. 2 decades later, the French returned to Haiti with warships and the threat of deadly conflict unless Haiti agreed to the French's demand to pay their former masters 150 million francs, an amount far beyond the means of this fledgling government, and in fact, an amount that resulted in Haitians taking out loans from the French to pay them back. This double debt created generational poverty and indeed misery for the average Haitian. According to the New York Times article, many economists agree that if Haiti had not been forced to pay the double debt, the country could have mirrored the growth rates of other countries in Latin America, with an economic cost of $115 billion loss to Haiti over time. Such a harsh economic reality, coupled with the history of dictators and government corruption, as at least part of the answer to what happened to Haiti. We could add to that our invasion of Haiti in 1915 and almost 20 years of our occupation of that country. We could add to that list natural disasters, such as the earthquake, one of the recent earthquakes that happened a year ago to this day. So having identified some of what is wrong with Haiti and understanding that much of the reason for its problems is a result of what has happened to Haiti, leads us to the last question. In a truly trauma-informed approach, which is what's right with Haiti? In the same way that individuals can not only survive, but even thrive in spite of trauma when given the right kind of support and when addressing the systemic reasons for their situation, so also have the people of Haiti exhibited an incredible ability to overcome seemingly insurmountable burdens and challenges with incredible courage and resilience. So for the remainder of my reflection this morning, I'd like to focus on some of the many things that are right with Haiti, as I've discovered through my work with organizations such as Beyond Borders, the group with which I often travel and whose projects and programs I see transforming lives. What's right? It's the places, it's the people, and it's the programs. And this is the point at which I'm going to cue David to hopefully begin showing some of the pictures. Oh my gosh, so far it's working. So this is a picture from the small airplane that we took from Port-au-Prince over to the smaller island of Lagonave. It takes about 20 minutes by airplane. Normally we would be traveling by different kinds of boat, by sea, but because of the situation and the instability, it's not safe to do that. So that's why we simply flew and we're primarily safe. So next. I just want you to listen and view this. Okay, thank you. So this was the view outside the window of the home that I stay when I go to visit Haiti and with this family. I don't know if you could hear some of the bird song in the background. There's roosters crowing. It's the most lovely way to wake up on a given morning, and such a stark contrast to the pictures that we know are also happening in places like Port-au-Prince. One of the main reasons I felt safe traveling to Haiti was because I knew I would be just a short plane ride away from the epicenter of the violence in Port-au-Prince. This remote and rural community on the small island has overcome much of the deforestation of years past, as community members have worked hard to replant trees, use solar panels where possible, and learned about eco-friendly practices, including compost toilets. Each time I return, the island is more lush and more beautiful, and you just saw the scene that I awaken to every morning. And this is just an example of the lush greenery. 25 years ago, you wouldn't have seen those trees. It's amazing how quickly, if you plant the right trees, they can grow. Then the birdsong has returned, which then all of this forestation allows for far less erosion. It's just so much better for everybody, for the earth, for the people that live there. And the next slide, please. So this tree that you see all over the countryside is called the flamboyant, which, as you can see, is very flamboyant. One of the people in our group, Angela, commented that for her, it feels very symbolic of the people and what they've been able to accomplish, the beauty, the hope, the new life in a place that, again, not even 25 years ago, you wouldn't have been able to see this kind of new life and lush. So whenever we saw those flamboyants, which was often, it was very a hopeful sign and a reminder of resilience and beauty in life. Next. So the place that I stay in Matanois is associated with the school called the Matanois Learning Center for Development. When I first went there 20-ish years ago, they only had about 3 grades, elementary. Each time I'll go back, they've added more grades, more classrooms, and they're now up to K through 12, which is very exciting. It's a model for the rest of the country. They teach in Creole, which is the language of the people, not French. There's no corporal punishment. Children write their own books in their mother tongue, little stories that they then share with each other. And they also have an exchange of mother tongue books with children in the United States who write books back and forth. The most wonderful thing about this school is it's become a training center for schools all across the island. So they're really shifting the understanding of how children are best educated in Haiti. And one of the most wonderful things we saw was that the Ministry of Education had written a letter to this particular district saying that there could be no corporal punishment in any of the schools. And the letter was written in Haitian Creole, not in French, and promoting the practice of teaching in the mother tongue. And this school really is the beacon that got all of that started. So this is just, they also have a community garden so that the children learn it isn't just about book learning, but it's also the dignity and importance of things like agriculture. So they don't look down on peasants. They see that as such a dignified profession. Each class has its own part of the garden. And this is us in the garden. Next picture. This is just an example of, looks like limes growing. Next. This is a new experiment. This is a tilapia fish pond. So they don't know how well that's going to work, but they're trying. And it's just exciting that, as I said, it's just so wonderful to go back whenever I'm able to. It's been 4 years since I was able to go back the last time, but just to see the continual progress and development of this community making it happen. And I think there might be a quick video of just the fish swimming. Can you see them? It's quite exciting. And that's Ivana, who's one of the teachers in the school. She's amazing. Okay, next. You don't want to see the fish swim all day long. This is a wall on the compound of the school. And next picture. It's made of plastic drink bottles that are everywhere, and they don't have any recycling. They don't really even have, trash pickup. So they have discovered that if you fill them with sand and then fill it in with whatever cement or mortar, all, local products right on the land there, it's pretty earthquake resistant. And I think it's also quite beautiful. So I just wanted to show the creativity as they're trying to find sustainable practices. Next picture. So this is the group that came back just a couple weeks ago in the little airport as we were getting ready to travel over to the island. And next picture. This is us. This was comfortably in a vehicle. And at other times, there were many more of us squished in even more than that. I want to point out just two people, one of whom I know is on. Denise is in the middle in the back. Denise, some of you may know Denise Honeycutt. She was a Methodist minister with her husband, Pat Watkins, for years in Lynchburg. But for a period of her profession, she was the head of UMCOR, which is United Methodist Committee on Relief, which does relief all over the world. And she was the head of that. And the woman on the right in the front is Ruth Messenger. Any of you who ever followed New York politics may know that name. She was a borough president. She ran against Rudy Giuliani for mayor. But most importantly, she was the director of Jewish World Service and American Jewish World Service. So she also has been all over the world directing relief. And she and Denise, that were part of this group, both agreed that what they saw was quite phenomenal, quite impressive and inspiring. And they also would agree that the most dangerous thing when you're there is just traveling. The roads are terrible. And because of the terrible roads, the vehicles are not very reliable. And so just being able to survive the transportation was the most challenging thing there. Not the kidnapping, not gang violence, but just surviving the travel. But we did it, as you could see, in good spirits. Okay, next picture. This happened a lot. This road actually looks wonderful because we stopped at a place where there was shade, but frequently you're taking everything out, fixing a tire, trying to figure out what's wrong, and then starting again. So I just threw that in. One more. So this is Madame Janos, her sister and niece, her daughter Shudley on the right, who I have known Shudley since she was like literally this high, a little wild child, and Claudia, who's a cousin. And this is the family that I get to stay with when I travel. Beyond Borders doesn't have guest houses per se. They think if possible, it's much better to just live with the families to get a slice of their life, their daily life, which is wonderful. And you, if you're as fortunate as I am to build relationship and friendships over time. There's also some bittersweet sadness as I look at this picture because Janos has another daughter, well, she has two daughters, but one of them, Sophia, had a seizure disorder. And she had access to the medical resources and support that she probably would have had in other places, she would still be alive, but she died as a result of her seizure disorder. She's buried above ground in a cement crypt, as you see often on the countryside, in between the house and their latrine. And when I first saw that, I was a little bit taken back. And then I thought, that's perfect. You're going to the latrine all day. That's part of your daily life. And a reminder of Sophia's presence every day, all day. So I just am grateful for the friendship and these families that open up their homes to us visitors and allow this. It's a very vulnerable thing. And Denise and I shared a bed in one room and another of the visitors was in the next room. And I got up especially early in the morning and I opened the door and I saw not one, not two, but three bodies laying down, sleeping on the floor so that we could have the beds to sleep in. That's their hospitality. We do compensate them obviously for the room and board. And so it's a way of supporting their livelihood at the same time. Next picture. This is us at a meeting where we learned about village savings and loans. So this is a little different than micro lending that a lot of us are familiar with, that actually still have a bank entity involved. The village savings and loan, it's the people themselves of a particular community coming together and contributing towards a common pool. And then out of that common pool, loaning money to each other for their different marketing endeavors, whatever that might be. And then at the end of the year, however much has been made and it's in the pool just gets distributed evenly, and then they start all over the next year. And they are so proud of this economic system that they have come up in their own community. We don't have anything to do with it beyond borders, other than to support them and be their cheerleader. But it was fascinating, and we actually were there as they have a little box underneath the desk, which is where they keep their money, and it works. Somehow it works. So that's that. Next picture. This was part of the teacher training. So it's a little bit out of order here, but this was the school that I was telling you about, that each time I come back, they have expanded and now they're becoming a teaching center for other schools. This particular teacher training was using a model called education as conversation. And I don't know if we would call them graphic novels or comic books, but they have these great illustrations. You can see them on the table, and I may have another picture that just have these different scenarios. This particular scenario was of an example of what's called Restavek in Haiti, where families that are destitute, poor, will send a child away to another family, being told that that family will see to it that in exchange for some help around the house, they can go to school and be fed. And so often what happens is the child actually becomes enslaved for all intents and purposes, in servitude. And so they're talking about that using the novel, and how could that be changed? What should they do? Which for us is a model that probably seems pretty normal, but for them is new, that they all have a voice in talking about the situation. Next picture. And again, we're looking at the text that they're working from. One more picture. So here's an example, and you can see it's all obviously in Creole. And one of the reasons I wanted to do that is at another meeting where we were talking to child protection brigades. These are small committees in different communities that are very sensitive to the possibility of children being held in Restavek. And when they identify that may be happening, they go into the home, they address it, they try to reunite the child with their family, and then give the family the support so that they're not as destitute, which is another program called the Family Graduation Program. Our group was asking the participants some questions, and one of them said, "How did you first find out that these programs were available to you?" And she said, "It was through education as conversation." So it was really neat to see that even though these different programs seem somewhat separate from each other, they really kind of feed into each other. And there's a cumulative effect, a positive effect. So it was really, for me, very interesting to see people being trained in how to share this, and then talking to participants whose lives have been transformed simply by this education as conversation. Next. This is one of the classrooms in the school. You can see the children's artwork. You can't see the books, the little books that they write themselves and then share with other children, but it's just not your typical school scene that you would see in most places. Next. This is, even though we were only there literally 3 full days, 2 days for travel and then 3 days there, we saw so many different groups. And these were graduates of the family graduation program, which case they do something called social mapping when they go into communities to be able to help identify the poorest of the poor. And once they get those families and they interview them, then they feel like they're good candidates. It's an 18-month to 2-year program where they're provided with some kind of livelihood. It may be a goat, it may be a pig, it may be seeds and for gardens, whatever it is. They're given a very simple home constructed for them, a latrine, the most basic of support. And then they have sort of a case manager, a Haitian case manager that works with them and walks with them through this journey for them to become independent and able to support themselves and their families. And the pride that they have as they talk about this transforming program is is wonderful. It's just very inspiring. And one in particular we remember said, before this program, she said, I had no name. It was so destitute in the way she was seen in the community, was as if she didn't exist. And she said, now I have a name. And she has 3 different accounts in these village savings and loans. So she's doing very well. But they do have a very, very positive success rate with this program. Next. Okay, that's good. So I love that because almost every community meeting that we went to would either begin and or end with some sort of activity like that. I can't directly translate what they were saying, but it was something like, we sit down, we stand up, we're together, we're working together, we're working for a good life together. And in between these very upbeat, physical, embodied experiences were some really hard stories to hear, from things like servitude or domestic violence and incredible poverty and misery. But because they are so empowered and because they're part of this supportive community, there's great joy. And so they begin and end with embodied joy, which is just very inspiring. There may be a short video from an actual Haitian woman telling her story. If David, is that possible? The Helia story?
The first place I was sent as a child, I lived there for 5 years. I experienced so much misery. I was the one who did everything in the house. I was the last to go to sleep and the first to wake up. I was beaten. I was insulted. I couldn't take it. I ran away and ended up in another house. That's where I really began to suffer. Everything fell on my shoulders. This person's child, I couldn't play with her. I couldn't even talk to her. It was like I was someone with an incurable disease, and they didn't want anyone to come near me. The only food I had was what I could scrape off the bottom of the pots when I was washing the dishes. At 9 years old, they had me thrown in jail because the person's child fell one day when I was walking her to school. For that, they had me thrown in jail. I suffered every place I lived, but that experience scarred me the worst. Beyond Borders helped me because I never thought I would be someone who could stand up in front of others and talk with them. Because of the scars on my heart, I couldn't speak. Beyond Borders gave me the space to speak. They organized training groups that expanded my knowledge and made it possible for me to speak, to go out in my community and to know how to talk to someone who has been enslaved or someone who has been raped. Beyond Borders helped me deal with my feelings. Now I'm always laughing, singing, and doing street theater. I found the strength to play, to talk, to share with others. Because of the help I got from them, I decided I wanted to help too. I'm going to fight to the end. In the groups we organize, I share my story. That's what I give. Someone there can then have the courage to stand up and say, I was a victim too. Here's what I experienced. I know that this work is hard, but I've given my life to it. The work is not easy, so please help us. Help us. Put your hands together with ours so we can save children and live in a country free of child slavery. Child slavery is bitter. Child slavery is horrible. It's awful. I'm planting because I know that even if I die tomorrow, what I plant will continue to grow. I'm praying for everyone who is supporting us so that we can support others who are doing this work, so that we can end child slavery.
So I'm so glad that we could end hearing from a Haitian herself. Yes? Did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed it.
Okay. So there is a bit of a shameless plug in that last slide. Although I just completed my term as board president for Beyond Borders, I continue to work on their fundraising team. And I'm now on the board of Friends of Montanois, which supports that particular school. So if either of those organizations are of interest to you and you want to know more about them and ways to support us, let me know. I'm happy to talk to you about that. As I began this presentation in the context of understanding Haiti through a trauma-informed approach, I want to conclude with a quote from Nate Postlethwaite, a survivor of childhood trauma in the United States, who now works to help other survivors find community and support in their own healing and transformation. Although he is speaking about survivors that he has worked with, I think his words are equally relevant to the people of Haiti and their ongoing transformation. Quote, "Those doing trauma work often feel intense pressure, confusion, and grief, yet still show up to heal. They don't need unsolicited advice or instructions, and they're not looking to be saved. They need to be seen where they are through a lens of validation and respect." End quote. I hope that my reflections today have in some small way provided validation and respect to the Haitians with whom I've had the privilege of coming to know over the years. May we all remember that what is wrong with Haiti is due primarily to what happened to Haiti, and that even so, there is so much that is right about Haiti and so worthy of honoring and celebrating. Okay, did you have a question?
Something I was curious about. My sister taught school there.
Please have them speak into a microphone so that everyone can hear them, including those on Zoom.
If you have a question, I guess they're asking that you come up.
The question is, as I said, my sister taught school there on the DR side for many years, probably 15, 18, maybe 20 years ago, until she was forced to leave. Point being, heavily armed border, no cross-border traffic at that time. The armed side of the border was the DR. And due to what the Haitians referred to as the walking death, and that 1 in 5 or about 20% of the population of Haiti had AIDS. And the subsequent, as my sister put it, and as I had read, very deep-seated resentment, anger towards the United States and other developed nations, especially, well, on the hatred end, Africa, Haiti, a lot of places around the world, for American pharmaceuticals withholding the vaccines and the drugs. So considering 20% of the population at that time was HIV positive, I'm kind of curious what that situation may be, or if it even still exists.
I really couldn't speak to that. I don't know what that situation is. I know that it's a very difficult situation for Haitians that for lots of different reasons moved to the Dominican Republic. They're not welcome there now. They're sometimes not welcome when they come back. So I know it's still a difficult problem, but I couldn't really address, where things are.
Well, I guess the assumption is globally, because none of us hear anything anymore about HIV.
Right.
So I assume it's lack of a better word.
Right. Well, it's interesting that COVID did not hit Haiti as hard as they thought it might hit Haiti. And part of it may just have to do with you're outside a lot. They just so far have been saved the worst, I would say, of COVID. I don't know about monkeypox or where that is, but are there any other questions? I don't know if there's questions in the chat box or how that works.
Ann and Larry want to say something.
Oh, okay.
Hi. I wanted to ask about drinkable water. Is the only drinkable water through bottled water, or do they have wells that are safe?
They do have potable water through safe springs and wells, and they also have good filter systems where we were. So we were never concerned about the water that we were drinking.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, Barbara.
Again, speak into the microphone, please.
Did you spend much time at all at Port-au-Prince, and how was that? What did you see there?
The short answer is no. This was the shortest trip I've ever taken, and Beyond Borders wanted to practice, due diligence in keeping us as safe as possible. So we flew in the international airport, had a driver take us to a hotel literally across the street, where we spent the night, and then we're taken to the domestic airport to fly over. So unlike previous trips where you would spend much more time in Port-au-Prince, we practically didn't even see it. And that was due to security concerns. Okay, well, thank you so much once again. I know this probably isn't the first and maybe not the last time I talk about Haiti when I'm invited to come, but just like any other place, it's always evolving and always changing. So hopefully the message will always be a little bit fresh, but thank you again for your kind attention, virtually and in person.
Yes, thank you, Ann. And that service is just really, the work that you do and the organization is really inspirational. And I hope all of you will reach deep into your pockets and help support it. Now let's join together and sing hymn number 20, Be Thou My Vision. I guess us Unitarians aren't known for our singing. As our service draws to a close, we extinguish the flame of our chalice as we say these words together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Between the Dawn and Dusk by Carl G. Siebert. Between the dawn and dusk of our being, let us be brave and loving. In our little passage through the light, let us sustain and forward the human venture in gentleness, in service, and in thought. Blessed be. People can contribute, maybe give it to Steph, our board president, and he can share it with the rest of the congregation through our email distribution. All right, thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day and a great week.